Joe, you mentioned that the first people you talked to were, a small percentage of the many women you've dated. But that opens up another. You were talking about the barriers that people feel as they sense maybe being called in this direction, and celibacy is one of the biggest. That people want to talk about that and hear what our experience is, because in terms of a cultural definition of what success looks like and happiness looks like, the life of celibacy seems so totally opposite of all that. And yet, your experience talking about meeting the seminarians and sensing, these are successful, happy people. So let's talk about celibacy a little bit as one of those things we all have to discern as we're heading in that direction. And how is it that you've kind of put that together so far in your experience of ministry?
Issue, and it's a huge issue for a high school kid and for a college kid, trying to figure out what God is doing and what I'm doing and how I'm responding to everything. But as you grow, and you, at least for me in these last 3 years, it just simply gets placed right within the whole identity of who I am. And it makes it a little bit easier to understand just for myself. It makes it easier to explain. And ultimately, it just makes it easier to live. And I live as a whole individual. I'm not a half individual because I don't have a wife standing next to me. And I often think about that when I walk down, when I hang out with some of my friends who are married, and they all have spouses around them, and I'm sitting in a single chair by myself. But I know that's exactly where I need to be, because this is what God has called me to, and I can be whole and completely happy because my relationship with God comes first, and I live out my sexuality in the midst of the community in a way that's different and unique from the way my friends are looking at their sexuality. And it's been fantastic.
I like the way you just described it in terms of how at times in our discernment and formation, it's like that's the issue, and as that was my experience too when I was in my early 20s and thinking about that, praying about it, and pulling my hair out about it and all that. But what I realized was over time, as I got more and more immersed in the life of the parish and all the relationships that happen in the parish, precisely because you're the future priest, and people instantly sort of want to bring you into their life and get to the real level discussions real fast, and families wanting you to become part of their lives, and all of those relationships that happen in the parish. And suddenly celibacy is experienced in a very different way than when you're alone in your dorm room and 20 or 21 and saying, am I going to be lonely as a celibate? Then you get to the parish with 2,800 families who want you to be part of their family, and celibacy feels different. You think about it differently, you experience it differently, and it becomes put in its right context.
Another aspect of it that's helped me as I move towards it is seeing celibacy as that commitment which priests take. In the married life, it's about commitment. In the priesthood, it's also about commitment. That vow is about commitment, just like it is in the married life. Of course, both husbands and wives have other attractions to other people, yet they remain faithful to that commitment to that one spouse that they've taken on. And it's the same thing in the priesthood, that eventually in life we have to make a decision and say, okay, this is who I am, I'm going to move forward. And our vow to celibacy is our commitment. And that melded with the spirituality. Even though it's not physical fruit, it can bear a lot of fruit, that celibate life.
From the start, there's a real big dislocation of how can this be my calling, but yet I feel such attraction to women. I'm just that was a big part of it. That was something that I had a hard time reconciling, that this didn't seem to fit in. This didn't seem to fit into the picture of who I was. And if God made me who I was, then and He wants me to do this, that was very difficult.
A priest mentor of mine once said to me something that still sticks with me. He said, I do want to have a wife, and I do want to have children, but I want to do something else more than that.
Yes, that's good.
And there are moments when I'll be in a shopping mall, or I'll be walking down a sidewalk, and there will be something about the way that I see that dad holding his son or holding his daughter's hand that I go, oh, that's not going to be me.
Yeah.
And then I think, but what am I going to be doing that's different and that's equally special in my life? The sexuality is not about intercourse; it's about relationships.
Yeah.
And I've gotten into countless deep and beautiful relationships with people over the years because they recognize me as a celibate seminarian preparing to dedicate my life to their service and be a member of their church family. The word family not used lightly.
Yeah.
And those are relationships that I would not have come to if I had just been, Jonathan, the fellow living in the next apartment.
It creates a great freedom, actually. I mean, that's part
Yes.
of the fruit of celibacy. Live well, live faithfully, and the spirituality of celibacy is that it creates this openness. Just exactly that you're saying. There's this freedom to relate that bears great fruit spiritually in the lives of myself too, but the people that and that's very powerful.
You don't get that type of relationship with people immediately in your just day-to-day life. And we get it with the parish. I mean, people come and they immediately put that trust in you. And there's a respect for, you as, as a deacon, as a priest, as someone who's celibate, who's dedicating their life to God and to this community. And you form incredible relationships with all of these people. It's very powerful. It's something I didn't really expect. It's something you read about, but I'm starting to experience it more and more all the time. And I think about, I don't know how I would squeeze in a family with this family that I have.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't see that. It's like what you're saying, how both, either married life and celibate life, there's a commitment to both. There's a sacrifice to both. And people, they talk about celibacy and all they just want to focus right on sacrifice. You're just giving up so much. Well, who is married and has kids that won't tell you that that's a sacrifice?
Right.
It's a matter of which sacrifice are you called to. And I have the experiences. I see the families. You see this couple walking down the street and they're just perfect together and for each other. And it's like, that's something that I'm not going to have. And that's a perfectly natural and good thing they have. Yet, not me. But it's something you take to prayer and you look at it. What is God calling me to? And I really feel that. When I give it to Him, that I am on the path that He's leading me, and there's a lot of good to come from both, and there's a lot of sacrifice in both.
I think one of the perceptions among some folks is, you eventually make the decision to go to seminary because you have failed in all of your business. You've tried 3 business things and you failed, or you couldn't get a job out of college, so you might as well go to seminary next. Or that you choose celibacy because you couldn't get a date. You just
That's
had one
dangerous.
failed relationship after another. But most guys, just listening to you talk, it's not a choice between a bad or a good, or something that you just couldn't have in your life, and so you're stuck with celibacy. But it really is a choice between 2 wonderful options in life. That the Lord kind of holds out there, and I think you put it beautifully. You could have both. Which one do you want more?